You know that moment when you're in a group conversation and you wait for a small pause to speak, but the pause never really comes? So you smile, you nod, you let someone else go first, and somehow the topic moves on without you ever saying what you were about to say. On the outside, it looks like you're just calm, easygoing, unbothered, but on the inside, something feels slightly off, like you were there but not fully seen. For a long time, I thought being ignored was something obvious, like people cutting you off on purpose or not inviting you at all. But psychology shows something more subtle is happening. Most people who feel ignored aren't being rejected, they're being overlooked, and those two things are completely different. Here's what makes this interesting. According to social psychology research on attention and group dynamics, humans naturally focus on what stands out: louder voices, bigger reactions, strong opinions, fast responses. Not because we're cruel, because our brains are wired to notice contrast. If someone speaks with strong emotion, our attention goes there. If someone interrupts confidently, we track that energy. If someone takes space without hesitation, the group adjusts around them. But if you tend to soften your voice, wait your turn, edit your thoughts before saying them, you don't create contrast, you create comfort. And comfort doesn't always grab attention. Now, before you start thinking, "So I'm just too quiet," let's slow down. Being steady isn't a weakness. In fact, research on emotional regulation shows that people who stay composed in social settings often have high self-control and strong awareness of others. You're not unaware, you're usually very aware. You notice tone shifts, facial expressions, micro-reactions. You sense when someone else wants to speak and you step back. That's not insecurity, that's social intelligence. But here's where it gets psychologically tricky. When you constantly adjust to others, you slowly train people to adjust less to you. Not on purpose, just through repetition. This is where it gets interesting. There's something in psychology called social signaling. It's the subtle cues we send about how much space we expect to take up. If you laugh off interruptions, the signal is, "It's okay." If you say, "Never mind," quickly, the signal is, "It wasn't important." If you rarely disagree out loud, the signal is, "I don't need the floor." Over time, people believe the signals you consistently send, not because they don't care, but because humans follow patterns. Here's the part most people miss. Sometimes being ignored is the byproduct of being low threat. If you're not competing for dominance, if you're not pushing your opinion forward, if you're not reacting strongly, you don't activate other people's alert systems, and attention is often linked to alertness. Think about it. In a noisy room, what do you notice first? The loud laugh, the bold story, the sharp opinion, not the quiet presence in the corner. But that quiet presence might be the most grounded person there. There's a reason this feels confusing, because you did everything right. You were polite, respectful, patient, considerate, and yet you walked away feeling slightly invisible. Psychologists who study group behavior have found that in fast-moving conversations, speaking early increases the chance of being heard later. Once someone is perceived as a contributor, the group gives them more room. But if you enter slowly or hesitate, the group unconsciously assigns you a smaller role. Not forever, just in that moment. And moments stack. Now, here's something that rarely gets talked about. Some people learned early in life that taking up space came with consequences. Maybe strong emotions weren't welcomed. Maybe disagreement created tension. Maybe being easy earned praise. So your nervous system adapted. It learned that blending in equals safety, and the brain loves safety. When your system feels safe being quiet, it repeats that behavior over and over until it becomes automatic. So when someone talks over you and you don't correct them, it's not weakness, it's conditioning. This is where it goes deeper. There's a difference between not having anything to say and filtering what you say. Many people who feel ignored aren't empty, they're edited. They think the thought, then they adjust it, then they shrink it, then they question if it's worth saying. By the time they're ready, the conversation has moved on, and afterwards there's that small, quiet frustration, not loud enough to confront anyone, just enough to feel alone. If this is resonating, if you've ever replayed conversations later thinking of what you should have said, then you already know this isn't about intelligence or personality flaws. It's about pacing. The social world rewards speed and certainty, but thoughtful people often move slower. They process first. They measure impact. They consider feelings. That pause, the one you take before speaking, is a strength. But in fast environments, pauses can look like absence. And here's the twist. People may actually feel very comfortable around you, so comfortable that they don't realize you're not fully participating. You become the safe background presence, the emotional support, the steady listener. But listeners rarely get spotlighted. This doesn't mean something is wrong with you. It means the traits that make you emotionally safe don't always make you socially visible. Now, let's separate two experiences that often get mixed together. There's social rejection, being pushed away, and social invisibility, not being actively pushed away but not actively pulled in. Those feel similar inside, but they come from different places. Rejection is about exclusion. Invisibility is often about dynamics, and dynamics can change. Here's something else psychology points out. People who are comfortable alone often carry that same low-demand energy into groups. They don't chase attention because they don't rely on it for self-worth. That's actually a sign of inner stability. But in highly expressive environments, inner stability doesn't stand out. Intensity stands out, and if you're not intense, you might fade into the background without meaning to. There's no villain here, just patterns, just nervous systems interacting, just habits repeating. And maybe the most important part of this entire conversation is this: being ignored is painful not because you need applause, but because you want acknowledgement. You want to feel that your presence registers, that your thoughts matter, that when you speak, people lean in, even slightly. That desire is human. It's not ego, it's connection. Before we continue, if you appreciate these kinds of calm, honest conversations about human behavior, you can subscribe and stay connected. It helps this space grow into something thoughtful and real. And if you'd like to support it further, you can join as a member. I genuinely appreciate it. Now, let's go one layer deeper. There's research showing that people with clear self-concepts, meaning they know who they are internally, often don't fight hard for external validation. They don't need constant confirmation. That's healthy. But here's the paradox. When you don't signal your needs, people assume you don't have many, so they prioritize louder signals. Over time, this creates a quiet loop. You don't demand space, so you're given less space. You adapt to less space, so you demand even less, and the loop continues. Awareness doesn't instantly break the loop, but it changes how you interpret it. Instead of thinking, "I must be boring," you start seeing, "I've trained myself to be non-intrusive." Instead of "people don't care," you see, "I rarely show when something matters to me." That shift alone can feel relieving, not because it fixes everything, but because it removes self-blame. And here's the final piece. Some people are loud because they're anxious. Some people dominate because silence scares them. Some people interrupt because being unseen terrifies them. And some people stay quiet because they learned peace lives there. None of these patterns are superior. They're just different survival strategies. If you've been feeling ignored, it doesn't mean you lack value. It might mean your value is expressed in a softer frequency, and softer frequencies don't always cut through noise, but they are still real, they are still felt, especially by the right people. At the end of the day, this isn't about becoming louder. It's about understanding why you move the way you move. There's something powerful about recognizing your patterns without attacking yourself for them. You were never invisible because you were unimportant. You may have just become very skilled at making yourself easy to overlook. And seeing that clearly, without shame, is a quiet kind of strength. If this felt personal, if it put words to something you've experienced but never named, you can subscribe and join this space for more conversations like this. And if you choose to become a member, I truly appreciate the support. For now, just sit with this. You were always there. You were always enough. And being softer does not mean being small.